Hey everybody, welcome back to the program. Today we some breaking news has come out of Israel, and apparently the oldest evidence of humans outside Africa has been discovered. And what they found was this. I'm not going to play this video, but this is like a jawbone of what's been confirmed as an anatomically modern human, and I did a video a few months ago about the oldest anatomically modern human ever, period, found in Morocco, which dates to 315,000 years ago. And then now they find an anatomically modern human not as old as the one in Morocco, but considerably older than anything found outside of Africa, which now pushes back the date of the out of Africa theory when modern humans left Africa and populated every other part of the earth. It's been pushed back by many thousands of years. Let's take a look. Before we take a look at this cave in Israel, which, by the way, the bones date to 177 to 194,000 years ago, so that's way back, which breaks the record or whatever of the previous oldest, which was about between 90 to 120,000 years. Again, this is very interesting, and again, everything comes out of Israel, it seems. And but before we go through that, I want to talk about the out of Africa theory and the human origins in Africa, and a little bit of Neanderthals before we actually go into the evidence. So here's an infographic of the mainstream out of Africa theory. So as you can see, here's Africa on the bottom left, and we branch out first into the Middle East, and then into Europe and China, and then down into Australia. This is all within 70,000 years ago, and this is all out of Eastern Africa, near the Horn of Africa in Ethiopia, more specifically. And then we have just 16,000 years ago through Beringia, and then down into the Americas. So this is, if you guys are kind of new to this is what has been taught in schools. This is a prevailing theory in terms of the mainstream, but over the past few years it's been come under heavy criticism, and it's been called to be amended several times, especially since this Morocco guy, the Jebel Irhoud skeleton, and then now this skull in Israel, and even some of the genetic data coming out of Neanderthal DNA and now Denisovan DNA. All of these things are contributing to this new, not really consensus, but it's become more and more common to hear people speak out against out of Africa theory. There are some people who think we came out of Australia first, and that's very interesting as well. The indigenous people from Australia will tell you that they were from the Africans, the modern humans that came from Africa rather, and then they both met. They had different starting points, and they both came together eventually. That's what they'll tell you. But anyway, I've heard a bunch of different theories. I'm sure you guys have heard a bunch as well. And if you guys have any other alternative theories, let me know in the comments. I'm always down to read those. But if I can direct your attention to here, Ethiopia, and there's these two sites, the Hertu and the Omo Kabish humans, and they date back between 195 to 160,000 years ago. And those two were the oldest until the Morocco Jebel Irhoud guy. Okay, so the earliest humans were referred to as hominins. So this is like Australopithecus and Lucy and all these other hominins way back 6 to 7 million years ago. And then eventually, this is what is the mainstream. These early evolutionary ancestors are recognized as belonging to the human family mainly because their bones reveal clear signs of bipedalism. So the fact that they walked on two legs is the reason why they're classified as pre-human. That's pretty much it. They walked on 2 feet. Everything else is out the window. The fact that they walked on 2 feet makes it so that they're direct ancestors of us. That's their reasoning. Not a lot of people agree with it, but this is That's the conclusion they came to, because bipedalism is very, very, very rare. To them, it's hard. I don't know either way. It is very bipedalism is definitely interesting, but that was the smoke for them. That was the smoking gun that these were definitely our ancestors. Even though now there's been genetics data that's come out that we're closer to pigs and rodents like rats and stuff like that than we are to primates who walk on who are also bipedal in some sense, whereas these rodents aren't. So I don't know how they reconciled that, but anyway, we're gonna move on. It was not until around 2 million years ago that human ancestors first migrated out of Africa and spread through the old world. So these are human ancestors. These weren't actual modern anatomically modern humans. I just want to make that clear. For a long time, anthropologists thought that Homo sapiens first appeared in 200,000 years ago in Africa. That theory is bits just because of the Jebel or Hud guy. And the reason why they thought 200,000 years ago is because of what I mentioned earlier in Ethiopia, the two Homo sapiens found that date between 160 to 195,000 years ago. And then it's been pushed back 100,000 years. So they found this guy in Morocco. If you guys can go back and check out my entire video. There's like a 25-minute video on this, but it pushes it back over 100,000 years, and it probably goes back even further than that, just because, again, I see this a bunch of times. You find a skeleton that's 350,000 years old. Well, who else was around? Like I said before, the stars have to align to get a fossil, and so there must have been a bunch of different humans, at least a significant population of humans, to have existed for us to even get a chance to find these fossils. For the skeleton 315,000 years ago to get trapped and get fossilized and survive to this day. So a lot of people like Randall Carlson think that humans date maybe 300. Like in 2004, he was saying that he highly suspected that modern humans went back 350,000 years or so. So he's probably right. His hunch is probably spot on. So they thought about 90 to 120,000 years ago, Homo sapiens branched out. And then in Israel, specifically, if we go back to here, there are these two caves, the Skul and Kavzas cave. And this is in Israel. And this is where these are where the bones were at the time, the oldest ever outside Africa. And then now another site in Israel smashes that. So they found this early modern human fossil in Misliya cave, and here's a map of Israel. If you can see my cursor here, there's this bay, and then there's almost a peninsula here, and then you can see this mountain range. Well, the Misliya cave is located here, and this is where it's a collapsed cave. So this is where they found the really old piece of the upper left part of the mouth, with teeth still intact, which is very interesting. And that dates to almost 200,000 years ago. So right then and there, that completely smashes the theory, because the mainstream theory was modern humans started in Africa 200,000 years ago, but they were already out of Africa by then, according to this skeleton. So first they found stone tools associated with the fossils, so it's early Middle Paleolithic. And then they found other toolkits from other sites in the Middle East that date to 160,000 years ago. So that was the first clue, were the type of tools that it had. The second were these dating techniques that they were using, and they were dating the sediments as well. So they have all these different dates, and they're comfortable with this 177 to 194,000 years around that time. They CT scanned, they made 3D models of the specimen, and then they created this image of the structures of the teeth. And now the teeth are very important to identifying it as a real modern human. Because when they first discovered this, there was some confusion as to what it was. But after looking at these features, the anatomical features, it had to be a modern human. It's very consistent, just like us. You pull a person off the street, you take a CT scan of their head, their skull, you compare it to this jaw and the teeth. It's tit for tat a modern human. So some of the features in the teeth gave huge hints to this. The first one was the thickening of the tooth crown along the edges of the inside surface. the incisor and the canine. So this trait called is only in previous species of hominins before humans evolved. So this shoveling was not in the teeth found at Misliya, which is highly indicative that it is a Homo sapiens. The article makes note that some modern human populations do have some shoveling on their teeth, while others completely don't. But in the fossil record, the only species that does not show shoveling is Homo sapiens. So according to the fossil record anyway, not modern dental records now, but in their fossil record, there's no shoveling in any of the teeth that they found. So that was one of the strong hints. The second one was the small cusp at the base of the tooth on the inside surface of the incisor. Again, the incisor and the canines. And again, it's absent in the Misliya fossil. So these two, the two absences of these features, and with the dating and the jawbone and all that other stuff, tells they can safely assume it's a Homo sapiens. So with that out of the way, they started to cross-examine other evidence. So what they did was they took the findings from Misliya and they compared it with this recent genetic study about the Neanderthal gene pool from Africa. So they took this Neanderthal femur from Germany. This is like they took the mitochondrial DNA from the femur, and this is a very famous case. A lot of studies were taken from this mitochondrial DNA, and many it's been a part of many different studies. So they took that, and they knew that the African species involved with that Neanderthal, it wasn't clear what it was, but they knew that there was some human from Africa that had to have intermingled with this Neanderthal. That, coupled with the 315,000 Jebel Irhoud Morocco human, the oldest human in the fossil record, make it clear that modern humans were already present in Africa in this time. So this suggests that there was probably an earlier migration as far back as 220,000 years ago, and probably earlier, because again, if you look at the map if you look at Morocco is very close to Europe. It's basically just a hop, skip, and a run across the. Did I say that right? Hop, skip, and a step across the Strait of Gibraltar, and then you're in Europe. So if there was a guy fossilized in a place like Morocco, then chances are he was probably part of a larger population. And if there was a larger population in Morocco for thousands of years already, it's pretty hard to believe that they wouldn't explore further north into Europe. I mean, you could see Spain from Morocco on a clear day. You could see they must have been able to see it somehow, or got wind that there was more land up there or something, or maybe a Neanderthal came down and met them or something like that. Anyway, there's strong hints of this interaction between these two, that when you look at another video that I did about the Neanderthals in the Iberian Peninsula, they think that humans pushed them out way earlier than they thought, like earlier than 40,000 years ago. And I did a video on that a few weeks ago. You guys can check that out. So there's a lot of evidence coming together. Now, it's not a clear picture, but now there's some sort of structure that we can see, some sort of I guess silhouette of what might have happened back then in terms of humanoids, hominins, ancestors, and cousins of Homo sapiens. So the Misliya fossil, again in Israel, just a little shy of 200,000 years old, although it's not as old as the scenario that I just painted. It's still the first fossil evidence confirming that modern humans left Africa considerably earlier than previously believed. So the whole, I guess the main takeaway that I get from this discovery is that this theory has got to be severely reworked, and we've got to really consider that humans, not only were we not alone back then, but we must have had some sort of really personal relationship with other humanoids of the time. And this is during the Pleistocene, and this, I don't know what the ice cores say, but I'm pretty sure that it was. I'm pretty sure there was a lot more land back then than there is now, because right now the sea levels are a lot higher. So the fact that they would have more land, and there are other types of people, and now there's all this evidence that people were intermingling way earlier than we thought. We really do have to consider that these people weren't just cave people. I mean, these people were probably relegated to caves for various reasons. I mean, there's weather, there's catastrophes and all that. But for the great majority of their existence, they must have been exploring or something. Like, they weren't just confined to a space. So I don't see any reason for Homo sapiens not to have left Africa way earlier than we thought. And so now that we have this abundance of evidence where we can kind of make these claims a little bit, doesn't it make sense to you guys that they might have intermingled at some point earlier than we thought? It makes sense to me. Another thing about this map, just before I end this video, is if you guys see Africa or Australia down here, they cross the Pacific, and then they're in Chile, or the southern part of South America. Now look at the dates: 50,000 years and then 15,000 years. So I don't know, that seems like a long time to try to cross the Pacific. So I think more so they were probably either island hopping, or Easter Island, which is supposed to be around here somewhere. Sea levels were lower. There were probably larger land masses in the Pacific at the time. Actually, I would probably put money on that. And if they did 50k years ago have a boat capable of crossing the ocean, then right there should have you guys think for a second. So if they had boats and seagoing vessels back then, and I did a video about ancient Egypt and how they had their version of the ship that was reconstructed to this day, and it was surprisingly sturdy and surprisingly good, and they use that to travel in the Red Sea and parts of the Indian Ocean. It's not out of the realm of possibility for people to go from Australia to South America and New Zealand and other parts of other islands in the Pacific, like Polynesia and stuff like that. I just thought that was a good. This is something I noticed. Let me know what you guys think about that. I read all your comments, and if there's anything about modern humans or Denisovan Neanderthals, or even like local legends or folk tales, anything like that, if you guys are have any knowledge about that, please let me know, and I'll probably talk about it in the next video.